So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this A2i talk. I hope you've all had a nice summer break. I can say I, for once, went on a 15-day road trip in Europe with my 4 teenage kids. And for those of you who have teenage kids, you can imagine that that is an endeavor associated with some ups and downs. I would still say most ups, but a few days in my holiday house alone would do me good. But here we are, and we have an exciting talk ahead of us. In today's talk, we have with us Andreas Hansen, Director of the WFP Nordic office, together with his colleague, Magana Gikandi. And they will talk about the strength of food system through transformative innovations. So the World Food Programme has in recent years done a lot to work closer together with the private sector to support the development of market-based solutions, both at the Nordic office, but also through their initiative WFP IGNITE Innovation Hub. But Andreas and Magana will talk much more about that. So thank you to both of you for joining us here today. So the plan for today's session is that we will have Andreas and Magana, who will start out with a 20 to 25-minute presentation, which will be followed by 10 to 15 minutes where you can ask questions. For the questions, please raise your digital hand, or you can also pose a question in the chat. I should also say that we are recording this session, which will be available for streaming on our website at a later stage. I think that is it from my side. So let me hand over the screen to you, Andreas and Magana.
Thanks a lot, Thomas, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to join you today. I'm here in the UN city in Copenhagen. I'm just back from the Norwegian political festival, Folkemødet. Had lots of good discussions in Norway with Norwegian businesses and the Norwegian government over the last few days. And this is really a perfect way to end, my first week back after the summer holidays. I'm not sure if your summer holiday sounds like an actual summer holiday, Thomas, but well done.
It was an attempt, at least.
Very impressive. So together with my colleague Magana, what I'll do is primarily 3 things. First, I'll touch on the problem, the state of food systems today, and the consequences of a broken food system. Then I'll zoom in on what WFP is doing globally in the Nordics. And then we'll focus most of the time on our work on innovation in East Africa, as Thomas alluded to. I've been engaging with you, Thomas, and your colleagues now for a few years. I used to be based in Nairobi for 4 years, came back to Denmark last summer for the first time in 15 years. And now I'm leading WFP's work in the Nordics. And that's both our work with Nordic governments, which are some of the big donors to WFP, is the work with Norwegian private sector and innovation actors, and then it's the work with political stakeholders across the Nordics and the Baltic countries as well. And I really think it's the best job in WFP. I really couldn't imagine anything better. All right, let's start with the problem. Magana, if you go to the next slide, just to give you a sense of the state of global food security. This is probably not a surprise to you, but it's still important to note, how big of a challenge global hunger is today. When I first joined the UN and WFP in 2010, there have been, some quite good years with millions of people being brought out of hunger and poverty, particularly in Asia, and that positive trend continued until 2019, and then we all know what happened. First came the pandemic, followed by the war in Ukraine, and that led to an explosion in global hunger. And I think you all probably noticed, the fragility of the global food system, that, a major shock to agriculture in Ukraine, that has an impact on food prices in Denmark, the rest of the Nordics, and in Kenya, where I was living at the time. And we saw global food prices really, really explode. And I'll come back to that later. Over the last few years, global hunger has slightly reduced, but it's still more than 300 million people, which is 300 people too many, to be frank. if you go to the next slide, Morgana, then the causes, the challenges, again, probably not a surprise to you, but just to emphasize that this is primarily a result of increasing conflicts and insecurity. In Sudan, for example, right now, you have a country with a lot of potential for agricultural growth, but at the moment you have more than 25 million people dependent on food aid. Then you have the economic shocks. Again, food prices globally rose dramatically over the last few years, but fortunately, in this part of the world, they have somewhat stabilized. But there are, 100 countries where there's still massive food inflation, and there's 5 countries where the food inflation, as we speak today, is more than 100%, which is just terrifying. And then it's, of course, the climate crisis, which, we're already starting to see the impact of that in Denmark as well, but it is even more of a reality in the countries where WFP works, particularly in the most fragile countries, where communities just don't have the ability to withstand, shock after shock. And I've seen that over the last 4 years that I spent in East Africa firsthand, increasing flooding in South Sudan, flooding in the Horn of Africa, followed by drought, followed by flooding, followed by drought. So the frequency of the climate shocks really is a challenge for the food system and for agricultural production in many parts of the world, particularly in Africa. Next slide, please. So for those of you who are not that familiar with the World Food Programme, we work in 120 countries globally, mainly in Africa, but also with major operations in the Middle East, parts of Asia, Latin America, and then Ukraine is a special case for us. Ukraine because before the war started 2 years ago, we exported a lot of wheat from Ukraine into our operations globally. Now we're both delivering food assistance in Ukraine, but at the same time we're working with the government of Ukraine to resume agricultural exports and support the farmers in Ukraine. And that's really, I was there earlier this year, and it's fascinating to see, the government of Ukraine and Ukrainian farmers, how they're able to keep up production under very, very difficult circumstances. I'm happy to elaborate more on that later. Next slide, please. WFP might be best known as one of the world's biggest humanitarian organizations, and the biggest one fighting hunger. And if you know us from the 80s and 90s, this was mainly done with in-kind food assistance. We still deliver in-kind food assistance, but our preference is always to deliver cash when possible. And I think last year, almost half of our portfolio was cash-based transfers, which in many contexts, when the markets are functioning, is the best and most efficient way of delivering assistance. But our mandate is not only humanitarian, it's also focused on long-term development, in particular work with smallholder farmers all across the world, helping them produce more sustainably. And I'm happy to come back to that later because that's where a lot of our work on innovation is focused. Then we also work as the logistical arm of the UN. There's a UN humanitarian air service, UNHAS, that works in many conflict zones that's driven by WFP, and in places like Afghanistan, Yemen, Gaza, some of the most difficult places to work right now. WFP really serves as the logistical backbone of the whole the UN system and also supports other humanitarian partners. Next slide, please. Zooming in on the Nordic office. The office here has been here for 20 years, but when I took over the leadership last summer, we started a transformation of the office, changing it from primarily being a communications office to now mainly a partnerships office. We still do communications, but the core mandate that we have here is really to support the Nordic governments, work with them to ensure that they continue to prioritize investments in agriculture and food security. And then is the work with the private sector, which traditionally WFP didn't really have a geographical focus. But now, the Nordic markets and the work with Nordic private sector, Nordic innovation actors like yourself is a major priority for us. And then it's the political work to ensure that food security, agriculture is a priority across the Nordic countries. And it is in many different ways, in particular in Norway, I would say at the moment, as I mentioned, I just came back from a few days at the Norwegian Political Festival, and it was just fantastic to see how so many of the debates were focused on food and food systems, both from a domestic Norwegian perspective, what can they do to increase production in Norway, but also what responsibilities does the Norwegian government and private sector have for supporting more local production of food and more sustainable food systems globally. And of course, that's also a topic in Denmark, but not as much as I would like and you would probably like. So maybe that's something that we can also work together on, making sure that food is on top of the agenda also here in Denmark. Next slide, please. So to give you a sense of the Nordics and WFP, collectively the 5 Nordic countries, the 4th largest donor to WFP, giving about $500 million in support last year. And the Nordic governments are primarily flexible donors. They give the money to WFP and then we decide where to use them the most. But there are certain areas where they're also giving us earmark funding, asking us to really prioritize our work. And that's, for example, in Ukraine, it's on climate action from the Danish government in particular. School meals is a major priority for a lot of the Nordic countries. And for me, it's been fascinating to see how suddenly there's also a debate on school meals in Denmark now. And, we have an event in the UN City next week on, how school meals can be part of the green transition in Denmark and across the world. And then it's innovation, which I'll zoom in on now. If you go to the next slide, Morgana. Yeah, just go to the next one. So within the UN system, a lot of different agencies work on innovation, depending on their mandates and their areas of expertise. WFP has specific strengths, of course, when it comes to innovation that's related to food systems, but we also work with a lot of the UN agencies on supporting their innovation programs, spotting challenges, and a lot of other things. We established in Munich, in Germany, a global WFP Innovation Hub almost 10 years ago, the accelerator that you might be familiar with. And then 4 years ago in Nairobi, with support from the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we launched the first regional hub in WFP, known as the IGNITE Innovation Hub. And for those of you who are familiar with East Africa, you know why we decided to place the first regional innovation hub in WFP in Nairobi, one of the most vibrant ecosystems in Africa. Lots of good local innovations and lots of investment coming in from foreign actors as well. So the innovation hub in Nairobi that I used to oversee until a year ago when I moved to Copenhagen is a partnership with WFP, with CARE Denmark, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as I mentioned, and then also supported by USA. So a great example of a partnership both with the UN civil society and governments supporting innovation in East Africa. Morgana will go into more details in the work of the hub slightly, but just in overall terms, the focus is on, just stand that the focus of the hub is focused both on delivering ecosystem support delivering innovation support to the ecosystem, and we'll elaborate on that. Then there's a heavy focus on learning, which is always one of the challenges in innovation. How do we learn from each other and share learnings with others? And then it's strengthening the innovation culture within WFP. And again, we'll elaborate on that shortly. I'll just finish with the theory of change. If you go to the next slide, Magana. And just take a minute to unpack this, because we had a very extensive process back in 2020, work with academia to find out, so what role can WFP and CARE play together in this space. There are a lot of innovation hubs in Nairobi, elsewhere in East Africa, but what we found out from hundreds of interviews was really that the support to early stage innovations is an area where there's always a gap, and where we can play a role. The focus on learning and on culture strengthening, and then we came up with this overall pathway leading to more climate resilient, inclusive, and locally led food systems in East Africa. And the importance of the locally led food systems is essential. That doesn't mean that there's no role for Danish innovation actors. There are plenty of opportunities for engagement, and Magana will highlight some of them, and he will also give you some examples of some of the projects that we have been supporting. Over to you, Magana.
All right, thanks, Andreas. Hi, everyone. As you've heard, I am Magana. I recently just joined the Nordic office slightly over a month ago. I have worked in WFP before, based in East Africa, where we met with Andreas. We actually set up the Innovation Hub together 4 years ago. I always had the dual hat of working on innovation, on our innovation programs, and then also private sector engagement. So right now I'm in the Nordic office, leading on private sector engagement. Before I move to the next slide, something I just want to highlight on one of our biggest programs, which is on the first pillar, and that's the food systems innovation ecosystem support. That's our biggest program on that pillar is usually entrepreneurship challenges that we run and that maybe you have heard of. So where we do call for proposals from the local ecosystem, where we want to support SMEs that have amazing innovations on food security. And then we take them on a journey of just, trying to strengthen their concepts, take them on a boot camp, and also giving them grants that help them scale their ideas. So the reason why I just wanted to touch on that is because some of the examples that we touch on what we have supported is basically on that pillar where we really try to support the local ecosystem and the local innovators because we realize we cannot do it alone. I will touch a bit on the 5 focus areas, 5 priority areas that we have under the IGNITE Hub. The first one, which is actually very recent, is the refugee self-reliance, and that's what we're really focusing on because of how our donor funding has gone low, and most of our refugee programs are not well funded. We have been forced to now try and look at how we increase their livelihood opportunities for the refugees that we support, particularly in Uganda. And some of the examples that also touch will also be on this. So we're really supporting refugees on starting on various food value chains to just put money into their pocket. The other focus area is on climate smart agriculture. This is something we're really looking into. How do we introduce transformative technology? And it doesn't even have to be so sophisticated. It can be, how the farmers tilling their land, because what usually happens when we're working smallholder farmers, most of their practices are usually from way back when, from how they were taught by their parents and their grandparents. But we come in with that expertise to just show them that, if you till your land like this, if you use these tools, if you use this type of tractors, these types of plows, you might be able to double your yields or something like that. So it doesn't have to even to be so sophisticated. It's just the whole approach, and innovation is also all about how you approach it. The other focus area is on local food production. We really want to increase the quality of the food that we are producing. We all know about food loss. we did, I think 2 years ago, I did a session with A2i, with Jakob on food loss, and it was a session being funded by the Danish government. And food loss is such a big priority. The region in East Africa is burdened by aflatoxin. So many farmers get their maize rejected because of aflatoxin. And our work as the Innovation Hub is to try look for these solutions that can help mitigate those food losses that also lead to a lot of income loss as well from the farmers. Introducing new value chains, mushroom farming, beekeeping as well. So these are interesting ways we've looked at it, and we're trying to increase the local food production. Financial inclusion. We're always, how do you support refugees and the low-income people we support without also supporting them get access to affordable finance? This is very critical. Even some of the SMEs that we've worked with, as much as they're not focused on a solution that's closely related to food, we're also open with working with SMEs that give affordable finance to the farmers, because that's usually the biggest bottleneck. You'll bring this amazing innovation, but how do we facilitate for them getting affordable finance so that they're able to finance the solutions that we're trying to bring up to them? And this also makes it very, very sustainable, so that we're not doing handouts. It's all about sustainability. And I think as A2i, you've also done the same model, especially in your Green Hub project in Uganda, where you have the DMDP project, and then you get a partnership with banks like Equity that come give affordable finance to the farmers and to the circles that are working on those projects. So I'm pretty sure you understand what I mean. And it doesn't even have to be that sophisticated. It can be just, how do we organize the farmers to be in VSLAs, that's village savings and loans, so that they're able to plan their activities in order. And last but not least, we don't want to forget about WFP, our operations. How can we make it efficient? How can we stop being maybe very expensive how can it reduce the costs in our operations? How can we introduce, click cooking technologies? And yeah, so these are the 5 focus areas, and I'll let you marinate on them a bit. And in case you have solutions on these areas, you'd definitely be a good fit for WFP. I'll just touch on 2 examples of the type of innovation ecosystem building that we've done to some of the SMEs we've supported. I'll start with Omia, which is an SME in Uganda, and we've really helped them scale a bit. As most of you might know, in the West Nile region, there's a lot of food insecurity, especially because there's a really large number of refugees, because Uganda has a really welcoming policy to refugees, especially the ones that come from the DRC. And as a refugee, when you arrive in Uganda, after a few months, you get a piece of land. But that piece of land becomes useless if you don't have the necessary inputs, you don't have the access to finance, the tools that you need in order to increase your productivity. So there was always a gap for so many years, because you're giving land to refugees, but how will they cultivate? How do they make good use of it? And we did a program in 2022 where we did a call for applications. There was an innovation challenge where we had SMEs just submit their ideas. And one of the companies that submitted the idea was Omia. And they had seen this challenge, and they were trying to break that gap on how are they able to provide affordable inputs to smallholder farmers. And that could be fertilizers to animal feed. And the system was also very unique, because they have the last mile delivery, where they have people from the village who actually get to the people who are really, really far away. In 2022, after we helped them build a concept, we had a boot camp, we had a pitch event, we were able to award them a grant of $40,000, which helped them really scale up their the activities, and this has also led to other investments, like from the Danish Refugee Council's Refugee Investment Facility. So as a result of this, the smallholder farmers or customers that they've reached have doubled to about 27,000 since we've been involved. They have been the first investee of the DRC Refugee Investment Facility, and as part of this, they're supporting close to 10,000 refugees in the next few years. So a really good example of how we're just trying to ignite innovation and also scale impact. I'll also touch on another solution. Still on the same challenge where you have a piece of land. You have refugees in southwest Uganda where they're not able to cultivate their pieces of land. They don't have the tools, they don't have the knowledge. So how do you bridge that gap? You start an idea where you're introducing new products that can give them money into their pocket. So there's Hodari, which so Hodari and Nourish for All are co-founded by the same person, so they're all interlinked. So Hodari is the sort of the NGO, and then Nourish for All. Hodari is the NGO that supports refugees, that has direct link to the refugees, and they have refugees into their platform and who are members. And then Nourish for All is an organization that provides training on mushroom activities and also connects them to market. So also another amazing innovation that we took in and also took them through our boot camp. And actually, as of 2.5 months ago, they did come to Denmark through our partnership with DTU, which we actually hadn't mentioned. But as part of our entrepreneurship program, we have an exchange program with DTU where we bring entrepreneurs or businesses to Denmark. They stay for a month and they're able to build or develop their concepts to just make sure that they're a success, and then they go back home and implement everything that they've learned through the partnership with DTU.
Thanks, Magana.
Sorry.
I think we probably need to leave time for discussion. So I'll just quickly wrap up with this last slide. Some thoughts from our side in terms of how we can work more closely with A2i and your members. So again, there's a matchmaking expert element to this. What expertise do you have that's relevant for some of the innovation actors that we're working with? There's technical expertise. There's knowledge sharing that's always essential. There could maybe also be opportunities for joint fundraising between some of the A2i members and some of the local actors, but they need grants or other grants. I think there are really lots of opportunities for engagement, and hopefully that's something we can discuss in the rest of the call. Thanks a lot, and back to you, Thomas.
Thank you very much. Perhaps if you move the representation, then we can see each other better. But thanks for this overview of what you do at the WFP and in particular on the IGNITE program. I think it is highly interesting and super relevant work. Also, I think with your last 3 points, there are plenty of opportunities for Danish companies to engage in your program, to engage with the East African SMEs, and in that way build new innovations and businesses. So very interesting. Please, if anyone have questions, you can raise your hand or you can just interrupt and ask your questions. Yes, there's one from Lisbeth.
Yes, hi everyone, and thank you very much for a super good presentation on innovations for food security in Africa. I'm quite impressed by the work that WFP has been doing on the innovation part. And I've, thanks to Thomas, been in dialogue with Emily and William, also based in Kenya. So my question is a little bit, is the challenge fund open all the time, or is it sort of time-based, that there are windows where you can apply, or how does that part work? And are you mainly interested in local entrepreneurs, as I understood from the theory of change, or are you also interested in foreign innovations?
Should we take a few questions, Thomas?
Oh, yeah, just answer this one and then we go on.
Okay, good. So the challenge, we run different challenges. So most of them are time bound, and we'll make sure to keep you updated once the next challenges are launched. But that doesn't limit the engagement. So great that you're already in touch with Emily and Will in Nairobi. So I think there are definitely opportunities for engaging the Innovation Hub in Nairobi outside of the challenges. On the focus, again, there has to be a local element. That's the core of the Innovation Hub. And sometimes the solutions are purely locally bred. But as you know very well, Lisbeth, from your work, sometimes there's a need for expertise, funding, or other support from Danish or other foreign actors. So yes and no, there is a local focus, but there are definitely challenges where support is needed from foreign innovation actors as well.
Super, thank you very much. And I forgot to mention, I'm from Nordic Impact Funds, so we invest in East Africa.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay, thank you very much. There is a question from Anders Frigaard. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Yes, my name is Anders. I'm from the IFU, Danish Investment Fund. Just a question to Andreas. In the beginning, you mentioned that the food prices, they have been very high for the last 4 years, and of course that's very critical for a lot of people living on the edge. You can say there could also be some positive elements of that, of course, that it will increase profitability in agriculture. So on long terms, you can maybe say that it's good that food prices are high. So it was just to hear your view on that, and also if there are some effects being seen already that the high food prices, they lead to better profitability and to more improved food security in Africa.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I wish that the food prices led to better profitability, particularly for the smallholder farmers. But as you know well, that's often not how the global food system works. That there are middlemen or others who benefit from the rising prices. So from WFP's perspective, we're mainly focused on the impact of the food prices on hunger, and that's a very negative impact. I agree that over time there could be benefits, but it very much depends on the context. And if this is sustainable production where the smallholder farmers are paid with the in a profitable manner, there could be some benefits. But what we're seeing globally for now is that the negative consequences are far bigger than the positive ones for now. But maybe in the future, when there's a more equitable food system, it might be a different case. But you're right to point out that it's not black and white, but for now it's mainly a negative, mainly negative consequences of the food prices in East Africa.
Okay, thank you. There's a question from Mikkel Dalsgaard. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, my name is Mikkel Dalsgaard. I'm representing Biofertilizer Africa, located in Uganda, where we make organic fertilizer based on a sanitation technology, which is EU verified to avoid any disease spread from the reuse of organic material, and then we boost it with natural NPK booster like soft rock phosphate we have plant nitrogen and so on. The challenge for us is that the farmers cannot afford this kind of input to really have an impact in increased yield. So how do you support this kind of product?
All right, excellent point. I can start, and Magana, maybe you want to elaborate a bit. But I think overall, we all know that fertilizers is absolutely essential for food security, particular sustainable biofertilizers. And it's also, in many African countries, and now since the war in Ukraine started, it's become increasingly politicized. So we have different fertilizer partners. We work with Yara globally and through the Farm to Market Alliance in some countries in East Africa. And I, had engagements with Yara over the past few days in Norway, at least. But, without knowing the details of your company, that sounds much more relevant and sustainable. So, we do have examples of where WFP, as part of our programs, we offer agricultural inputs, including fertilizers, to smallholder farmers. And sometimes that's the role of the WFP, but it depends very much, which different actors are present in that context and have, the best capacities to do that. In some instances, it might be FAO, it could be the local government, it could be in local private sector or civil society. So, there are definitely examples of WFP, buying locally produced biofertilizers and offering them as part of our inputs into the programs, and that's something we need to see more of to increase local production. Magana, anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I think what I want to add is just a question back to Mikael. I think for me, I'll be curious to know why do you think that the farmers are not able to afford the fertilizer at the market? How are the market prices? Are they the same as the other fertilizers, or that would really help us?
I think that the situation is in Uganda is that the use of fertilizer is on a very, very low scale, and we have also seen in coffee production that because of disease spread, the wild coffee disease has been spread all over Uganda. That's why we have developed this heat sanitation. So we reach the temperature to have a safe recirculation of organic waste fraction, and that could be in a biocircular business model where the coffee residue is sanitized and upgraded with natural NPK boosters, and then bring back to the coffee farmers. Our price is the level we are trying to reach is always 20% below the inorganic fertilizer, but how to compare, because we are also looking at soil health, we are looking at food health, healthy food, instead of inorganic fertilizer, and we are actually setting up domestic production. But it seems that we have some challenge with the support from the institutions, the government institutions in Uganda. There can be a lot of reason for that, which I will not go into, but we need support in terms of how can we make a program where someone is able to finance the fertilizer until the increased yield are coming back. So we are talking about a finance of fertilizer in, now I say 1 year or so, but we have done a lot of trial and we have evidence of double increased in coffee yield. So there's no doubt about the effect of our product. We have been in Uganda since 2017, and we are still waiting for someone who can support us.
So maybe I can encourage you, Mikkel, if you're not already in touch with WFP in Uganda, we're happy to facilitate contact to our country office there. I mean, coffee is not the value chain that we work the most in, but we are often in close contact with the government, both at central and local levels. So there might be some opportunities there, and we are doing programs in Uganda, particular homegrown school feeding, which are funded by Novo Nordisk Foundation. We're hoping that Grundfos Foundation is coming in together with the Danish government. So that I think it would be helpful for you to engage with our colleagues in Kampala. I know we're running short of time.
Yeah.
So
sorry, just
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry.
We'll for sure get back to you. Thank you.
Just a quick comment on the affordability of inputs, maybe for farmers. I think it's very important to also look into some of the digital finance solutions that exist. And I know that also the IGNITE program has worked with IMATA and other entrepreneurs like that that provide that, because often it's a matter of the farmers getting input financing in one way or the other, and getting a credit scoring through digital solutions. Just a comment.
Thank you for that comment as well. There's one final question from Arne Remmen.
Yes, thank you very much for impressive work you are doing. My question was a follow-up to Magana, related to, you mentioned it with the food loss, because since 1/3 is lost or wasted in the value chain, I think it's a low-hanging solution that could give much more attention. Are you following up on this work? That was one question. And then I was considering to what extent you involved. We have worked a lot with Gulu University that are in the region, and I think that could be combined with what you mentioned about the entrepreneurship program, and also we have a Danita project on what we call green charcoal, so making briquettes out of other type of waste from agriculture and forestry that have a big benefit climate-wise, and also related to less pollution, less smoke and particles. So are you dealing with this type? Because we are also considering this with clean cooking for the schools, so that could perhaps also be some connections there.
Yeah, thanks, Arne. I think I could start with your last one. That's definitely a solution we'll be interested in. So maybe we can take this conversation further and also connect with your Uganda team and see what if we can get some linkages. And on your first question on food loss, that's definitely something we've been trying to push. One of our biggest donors is the US, where we are really trying to work on aflatoxin to just minimize food losses. We've done a big study also in Ethiopia, in Kenya. We've done so many projects on that. We've introduced new solutions like Afla Kiosk to just help with that sort of food loss management. Yeah. So if you have solutions on that, please, let's take it forward.
Okay, I'll get in contact.
Okay, thank you very much. Time is up. So thank you very much to you, Andreas and Magana. I think it has been very interesting to listen to the work that you do. And I also sense that just from this small group that we're here, that there are possibilities for collaborating with the program, but also to establish collaborations between Danish companies and some of the East African companies that you support. So thank you very much for joining us here today.